Hi, I'm Delorianne back with another episode of Read For Book Club. And this is our Coastal Magic edition. And I'm here with Cecilia Dominic, who is going to be with us for the first time in person this year, but you've been on virtual previously, right?
Yes. Yes, I believe that was last year. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I'm really looking forward to actually seeing all you guys in person this year.
Nice. It's gonna be a lot of fun. The hotel is gorgeous. We were just over there recently. Oh, I cannot wait to see people again.
hmm
So, how have you been keeping busy this new year?
well, my day job is I'm a sleep psychologist. And so it's definitely been ramping up back at the office. I've also been finishing up the Fae Files series with the final book in it and
Nice.
trying to figure out what I want to do next.
Do you have ideas that you're picking from, or are you going to sit down and do brainstorming for your next idea?
I have ideas that I'm picking from.
Oh, is that an abundance of riches, or are you overwhelmed? What am I going to do?
No, I'd say it's more of an abundance of riches. It's more just thinking strategically and okay, what can I fit in? Because I actually do still have two books to write for a time travel fantasy adventure contract that I have with Falstaff Publishing, and so we're still working out the timing on that and hoping to maybe do a rapid release in 2024.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Very good.
Yes.
So you mentioned, sleep studies and what you do in your everyday life. Does anything from your life end up in your books? Do you make that on the page?
So first, one clarification: I do sleep psychology, not general
Oh,
sleep medicine. So I don't do sleep studies. I did for a while as part of my career, but yeah, the wavy lines just too much. So yeah, as you have probably noticed, I have a supervisor with me. This is Timothy Mouse, and he hates it when I show him to the camera. So I had not intended to put a cat-like character in the Fae Files, but he snuck in there. So we were in the North Georgia mountains. My parents have a place up there. My mom's allergic to cats, so he can't come with us. And it was the start of NaNoWriMo, and I was starting the Shadow Project. And I will admit, this cat and I have a somewhat codependent relationship. And so I was really missing him. And wouldn't you know, in the first chapter, a teleporting kitten appears. And
oh,
thankfully, yes, thankfully, Timothy Mouse does not teleport. But it's so funny now when I write Sir Raleigh, which is what the cat's name ended up being, or I'm editing him, he's got to be right there on my lap or on the desk with me.
oh, that's so sweet.
Yes.
And he makes an appearance on almost every Zoom call I've ever had with you.
hmm
He's so cute and so, like cuddly right there. I'm also noticing that you are in a different place than you normally are. You got new digs?
Sort of. I moved from that corner to this corner. Yes, finally, I have a real office. So this was the spare bedroom. So you probably remember there used to be a bed in the
Uh-huh.
background. And we finally got rid of the bed in the master bedroom, moved the bed that was in here in there, and I finally got to set up my office.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, it's still a work in progress, but yes, this is where I write. This is also where I see patients from home, but now I'm by the window. Both Timothy and I have a bird feeder that we can watch, and I finally got to hang up all of my art that I have been collecting for my office for years.
Oh, wow. I bet that is so like in your soul,
Yes.
having all of your space and you get to see this vision every day.
Yes,
Do,
exactly.
do you have a favorite art piece that you're putting up?
Yes. So I actually grabbed it from the window. So he's going to go in between the windows once I get real curtains in here. Right now it's just a sheet. But my sister gave me this gorgeous dragon sun catcher several
Oh,
years ago, and he's been
wow.
hanging out in his container. And it's so funny. I was so delighted to find him because I'd forgotten that I had it. So yes, I'm very, very happy to be able to put my dragon up because, as you can
That
probably
is,
tell, I really like dragons.
yeah, I think that's gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah,
Wow.
my sister has good taste.
I need another sister. I've got tons, but there's always room for another one. Tell her my birthday's in December.
Okay.
So, so what I'd like to do now is a deep dive into
Mhm.
your back catalog. You mentioned dragons. I could not tell at all that you like dragons. Would have never put it together. And as people can see behind me, these are your book covers.
Mhm.
And we're about to do a deep dive into your catalog, and for people who want to follow along at home on a secondary device, we've got the QR code that will take you right to Cecilia's website, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's the slide with all of your books laid out.
Mhm.
Is there anything that jumps out at you looking at them all in one place?
I really like the covers. I guess it's a
Covers are
good thing
gorgeous.
since they're my books.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. And I noticed that some of them have been recovered recently.
Yes, the Fae Files got new covers last year, as did the two full-length books in the Dreamweavers and Truth Seekers series. So Tangle Dreams and Web of Truth also got a facelift last year.
Yeah. I love the colors. I mean, one, you can immediately see what kind of goes together, what series goes
Mhm.
together. And then the colors are just so striking. So,
Yeah, I agree, and I have to give Best Page Forward credit for all of the recovers from last year because, yeah, I think they did a great job.
yeah, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the first slide, which is going to be your urban fantasy.
Mhm.
I know that all of these series are kind of sharing the same universe. So as we talk about them, you'll give us a little idea of where, they all connect. But let's
Mhm.
start with the Lycanthrope Files. Where did this story idea come from?
I was doing my pre-doctoral internship in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm based in Atlanta. So it was somewhat far away from home. And Arkansas is a really interesting place. I was at the VA there, which is the big VA for the region. And so we'd have veterans come from all over, including up in the Ozark Mountains. And I had one rotation where I would screen the veterans on the dialysis unit for depression. I would talk to the new ones coming in and see how they were doing. And there was a lot of downtime, so I would just chat with them. And some of the veterans from the mountains just had the most interesting stories of the weird things that they had seen up there.
Wow.
And yeah, so I thought, okay, what paranormal creature would go well in the Ozark Mountains? And I was like, oh, werewolves, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how the lycanthropy files were born. And of course, I'm a psychologist, and I was doing my training in the early aughts, the early 2000s. And at that point, we'd had the big ADHD boom in the 90s, and it was all about child bipolar as I was going through college and grad school. And so I was like, okay, what if lycanthropy were a genetic disorder and typically it manifested behaviorally in children? But now there's this whole new level where people are actually starting to turn into wolves. So the conceptualization was lycanthropy as a medical disorder. And so
Uh-huh.
these are urban fantasy medical thrillers with romantic subplots.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
So there's different people on each of the covers. Does it
Mhm.
feature the same main character all the way through, or is this different people for each book?
No, these are different first person POV characters for each book. So the first one is Joni, second one is Lana, the third one is Gabriel, and then the fourth one is Kyra. And they appear in the other books as well,
Uh-huh.
but we get a new perspective with each book.
Awesome. Okay, so then that brings us to the Fae Files. Where did this inspiration come from, and how do they relate to the world?
You know how sometimes you have these characters that just won't leave you alone?
Yes.
Yes. Uh, Raina the Fae appeared in Blood Shadow as a secondary character, and she ended up being so much fun
Mm-hmm.
that I thought, okay, fine, you can have a spinoff. And we'll do a book. And she was like, no, I want a trilogy. And I was like, okay, we'll do a trilogy. And we get to the end of book 3, and she's like, no, I want a series. And so, yeah, I just finished book 6, and that will be it for her part of the Fae Files. But the Fae
Uh-huh.
Files are all her, all first person point of view. And starting with book 2, we also get the point of view of Lawrence, her gargoyle paramour. So these are also urban fantasy, mystery thrillers with romantic subplot. The romantic subplot is slow burn enemies to lovers.
Nice.
Yes, because Lawrence starts out as a supposed expert on all things Fae, and we find out why. It's for a somewhat tragic reason, but of course it drives her crazy because he's face-splaining in the first
Oh,
book.
oh,
Yeah, and of course this is also the series with Sir Raleigh the cat Grimalkin in it.
nice.
Uh, yes, so she's an exiled Fae, and she is trying to figure out how to get back home. And so her mother, who is the crown princess and fairy, so the daughter of the queen, and Raina is the granddaughter,
Mhm.
she offers her a bargain. She needs to figure out this one mystery at the Center for Paranormal Disease Control,
Mhm.
and she can be let back in. However, we also know that Fae bargains are loaded with tricks, and there are loose ends and complications, and that's why it's a 6-book series.
Right. And now you said I saw that there was a pre-order for book 6. When is that
Correct.
expected?
That is expected in early March. I do hope to start selling it directly beforehand. So when I do, I will let you guys know.
Awesome. Perfect. Now,
Great.
that brings us over to Dreamweavers and Truth Seekers. What's the nugget for this, and how does it relate to the rest of the world?
Truth Seeker is the first story that I wrote
Mhm.
in this universe, and I'm trying to remember how it came up. I think it was when I was just writing around and trying to figure out what I was interested in, because I actually wrote that on internship before starting the book that became The Wolf's Shadow.
Mhm.
And being a sleep psychologist, I wanted to mash up my two loves of urban fantasy and sleep. And I was like, oh, well, what if the creatures in the collective unconscious
Uh-huh.
started getting frisky and started wanting to invade the waking world? And that's the premise for Tangled Dreams, which is that the nightmare creatures are coming through to the waking world, and it is up to my group of misfits to figure out why and how to stop them. And Truth Seeker is when the gods are starting to get interested and starting to make trouble. And we also meet Margaret of Cornwall, who was the long lost aunt of King Arthur. And she is now a truth seeker, which is basically kind of like a supernatural law enforcement
Uh-huh.
person. But as we find out in the other books, especially in the Fae Files, is like not all of the other supernaturals take the truth seekers seriously. Yeah. Um,
Oh,
and
are
then
they the truth are out there, people, and not everybody believes?
Yeah, so, and this is definitely one of those, hidden paranormal worlds, like the humans, most of the humans are not aware of them.
Uh-huh.
Um, but also of note in the Dreamweavers and Tree Seekers, Web of Truth stars Morgan Le Fay, still, set in modern age, and that is the one that I was a finalist for in the Daphne du Maurier
Oh,
contest
wow.
in 2019. So that is my certificate and my ribbon behind me.
Yay.
Yes.
I know we have a lot of readers who love the Arthurian world, and I know I'm saying
Mhm.
that wrong. I always say it wrong. Something about the TH in that word. I can't.
Yep. The R
But
the RTH is hard.
so I know that this is going to be a hit for those readers for sure. Now, each of these series are in the same universe, and we
Mhm.
talked about how, each of them, kind of influence the other. Is there a specific reading order? Because I know that there are people who like to read in chronological order, regardless of how little the tie-in might be. Or is
Mhm.
it something that if somebody is not as concerned with chronological order, they can read one series, then the other, then the other?
That's
What
a great question.
do
I
you
would say if you are an order reader, definitely read the Lycanthropy Files and then the Fae Files.
find? Mhm.
You can read the Dreamweavers and True Seekers before or after them because they are very loosely connected.
Okay. What about audio for these? Are any of these in audio, or we're talking ebook and print only?
Ebook and print only. I have not yet found the right voice for my audio.
Gotcha. I know if people sign up on your website for your newsletter, there is
Mhm.
a few books that you then send readers that are free. Are any
Mhm.
of these included in that?
Truth Seeker is. At this point, The Wolf Shadow is, although I'm about to change that for it to be the prequel short story collection to the Lycanthropy Files, which is called Through a Wolf's Eyes. I just did that one late last year.
Okay.
And also Noble Secrets, one of the steampunk books, is included. Oh, and I will also say that if you're looking for dragons, I don't actually write dragon shifters, but there is one interesting, very minor dragon character in the Dreamweavers and Truth Seekers.
Awesome. So then next we are going to steampunk, because I know steampunk has probably got an official definition, but I know
Mhm.
that every author interprets it a little differently. So if you don't mind, can you start with a brief explanation of what steampunk is in your universe?
Yes. In my universe, steampunk is still carrying along with the idea of steam as being the dominant technology
Mm-hmm.
for longer than it actually was. And in my alternate history universe, the South never went into Pennsylvania. They kept the Civil War purely defensive, so Gettysburg never happened. And it's now 1870, and there's a stalemate. And coal supplies are running low, and so they're looking for a new power source in ancient art and artifacts. And that's where Eris element comes in. So it's not Eris as in like super steamy romance stuff. Maybe I should have named that book differently. Yes, these are all sweet. The urban fantasy books are a little bit more, I mean, they don't have really high heat levels. There's maybe one love scene, two at the most per book. And the scenes are, sensual more than sexual.
Right.
Steampunk, definitely, these are all more on the sweet side of things.
Okay. And I think that there's a really cool take you have on this series and your female characters and
Yes, thank you.
their ability.
Yeah, so each one of my female characters in the Ether Psychics has her very own, very specific psychic power.
Mm-hmm.
In Noble Secrets, which is the prequel, she can tell what people want. Then in Eros Element, Iris, the heroine, wants to be an archaeologist, and her special ability, her psychic power, is that she can tell what the people who handled objects before her were seeing, thinking, and feeling to different degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Marie in Clockwork Phantom is a great actress, and she can pretty much convince anybody that she's actually the role that she's playing, but she loses a little bit of her soul to each role she takes on seriously. Then in Ether Spirit, which is my first true dive into second chance romance, Claire is an empath, so she can tell what people are feeling. And it's very confusing for her because in this one, it's also an amnesia romance. I just
Mm-hmm.
went ahead and pulled out all the tropes on this one. And she was in a steam cart accident with her fiance, who is the hero in this book, but then she was so traumatized and her family didn't want her to marry him because he's Black. So they sent her to Paris and basically hypnotized all memory of him from
Mm-hmm.
her. So the tagline for that is something like, he'll never be able to forget her, but remembering him could kill her. So it's very confusing to her, all of the feelings that she's getting from him. And then in Ether Rising, this was a really interesting one in a romance. Nobody can lie to the heroine.
That's a cool talent.
Yes, cool and sometimes troublesome.
Yeah. We jumped right into some of the tropes, but do you remember the nugget that sparked this series?
This one was sort of doubly random. So, first, I had a friend who was editing a steampunk anthology of fairy tale retellings, and he invited me to submit a Sleeping Beauty story.
Uh-huh.
And so that eventually became Ether Spirit. It didn't actually make it into the anthology. So that's when I first got interested in steampunk, found Gail Carriger, started reading more in the genre. And then Eros Element came about when we were up in the North Georgia mountains and we had the windows open and it was gloomy and cloudy and foggy outside, and some of the fog was actually coming through the window. And what was originally the first line of Eros Element popped into my head, and so I just had to go from there.
Very cool. I personally have read Noble Secrets and Eros Element. I really enjoyed them. I thought the take on their abilities was interesting. I thought the action adventure parts were really, really fun. And I like the back and forth between the main characters because in both
Mhm.
of those books, the characters are not immediately smitten with each other.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of, hey, what are you really about right now that I enjoyed.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely do not do the love at first sight trope. I like to be a little bit more realistic with my relationships. They have to grow to like each other. And yeah, I think the cover artist did a great job because if you look closely, you can tell that the heroes of Noble Secrets and Eros Element are actually brothers. Oh, and all of these are in audio, the Ether Psychics and Inspector Davidson.
Awesome. That's how I read both of those with through audio. I highly recommend them. They were fabulous.
Thank you.
And then the Inspector Davidson mysteries tie into that. We meet
Mhm.
Inspector Davidson in the prequel. So how did he get his own series?
Oh my gosh, he had to be in every single one of these darn books. And so finally I was like, "Okay, Henry, you can have your own series." And he's like, "Well, it's about bloody time." So we start seeing the setup for his series in Ether Rising.
Mhm.
And honestly, the Inspector Davidson mysteries, these like The Art of Piracy is a prequel, and it was in the box set that I and a group of other authors hit the USA Today bestseller list with in 2019.
Yay!
Yay! And then Mission Nutcracker was it's a retelling more of the original Nutcracker story, but there are definitely nods to the ballet in
Mhm.
there as well. And so it's more of a holiday book. You don't have to have read one to read the other. And so when it comes to the Inspector Davidson mysteries, I anticipate that the next one, which I've kind of sort of been working on, is actually going to be the true book one in the series. But these are both just really fun, light steampunk reads.
Awesome. Now, does it matter? Because they don't necessarily need to be read in order for them in that series, but does any of it influence anything from the Ether Psychic? Or you can read it in any order?
So the other psychics you probably want to read in the order that is shown, although Noble Secrets is a prequel novella, so it can be read before or after, however you want to
Mhm.
approach it. But yeah, definitely read the Ether Psychics in order because it is a through line. And then with the Inspector Davidson mysteries, yeah, you can read them before or after. They don't really have much of a effect either way.
Okay. Awesome. I will be continuing this series and then heading to the urban fantasy because urban fantasy is my go-to genre for
Mhm.
a lot of my reading, that and mysteries. But I'm enjoying this one so much that I'm like, okay, let me do this one and then I'm gonna go back.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think there is a bit of an overlap between the steampunk and urban fantasy audiences because a lot of the steampunk they are mysteries, and each one of these does have a mystery.
Hmm.
And we also have the sort of magical psychic powers in each of them. And a lot of them, the question is, okay, so is this actually magic or is it science? And where is it crossing over?
Right. That's a really interesting question.
Hmm.
Okay, so then our last slide here has got a little bit of everything. Let's
Yep.
let's keep the paranormal theme going first. We'll hit
Hmm.
fire dancers. These covers look very contemporary, but they are not.
No, these are urban fantasy minis, I would say. So they're short or long short stories, is what I would call them.
Uh-huh.
And the hero, well, we're finding out more about her as the series goes. And and honestly, it's been so long since I've read or written these, but basically, she's kind of a witch. In Always a Bridesmaid, she is running a business, basically putting on bridal lunches and brunches and things. And she finds out that something from her past has come to haunt her. And then in Unlucky in Love, there are leprechauns.
Leprechauns.
Leprechauns, yes. The small annoying kind, not the tall sexy kind that some people write.
Yeah. So
But
it's the same main character for both?
yes, it's I just remembered her name, Tiffany. It's Tiffany in both of them. And she has a love interest and it's a very
Mhm.
it's a slow burn romance thing,
Mhm.
like in the Fate Files as well as slow burn romance.
Okay. So then we come to A Perfect Man, which is the first book in your Perfect Book series.
Yep.
What is this one about?
This series came about, wow, when did I write this? Perfect Man was a third book that I ever wrote after Wolf Shadow and Tangled Dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and True Seeker. So third full length. And I wanted to do my own personal MFA. So I have a PhD, and my husband says, no more school for me because you have a terminal degree, which I think terminal degree just sounds awful. But that, yeah, he's like, no more school for you. So I'm fine. I'm going to do my own MFA. And so I built this MFA in genre fiction program that I would absolutely love to go to. And that is where the perfect books are set and will be set. And so in A Perfect Man, they are in the semester on romance.
Mm-hmm.
And they are learning about romance as they are experiencing it. And so our two main characters, we have Karen there in the back. She's coming out of an emotionally abusive relationship. She's super skeptical about romance. She doesn't know how she's going to find her hero either in her real life or in her project. And then we have Seth, who was a software developer, and he's really cynical about romance as well because his mother and stepfather's marriage is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turns out, they are forced to work together on the project. And the prize for the best project in this class is dinner with Karen's favorite author. So she is really invested, and she's so pissed that she has to work with this annoying classmate. And so we have, we've got a good enemies to lovers trope, and it was just kind of fun playing with the tropes as the characters were experiencing and trying to figure them out themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to continue the series, but this has been, because it's so far out of my normal genres, readers have really had a hard time finding it. And so basically, I'm hoping that I'll have more readers read A Perfect Man and be like, hey, where's the rest of them?
Yeah. And because this is contemporary, so they probably see your paranormal and your urban fantasy first.
Exactly. And when I was writing this book, I got about 40,000 words into it, and I was like, well, nothing weird has happened. I guess it's contemporary.
Is that the benchmark, 40,000 words?
I think so. Nothing weird has happened by 40,000 words. It's not going to be paranormal.
Surprise, aliens from outer
Yeah.
space. Okay. And I think you hinted that Fire Dancer has more stories to come as you
Mhm.
are able to work on them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Since they are, very short stories and they're not really, part of any of my other universes, it's more, yes, as I have the chance to work on them. And I've thought about doing like a Kickstarter or maybe starting like a Patreon and just having them like one Fire Dancer story per quarter being the reward for being in Patreon. But, again, it's finding the time and gauging interest.
Okay. Well, hopefully people will see these and pick them up. And then who knows, by this time next year, 5 more in the series.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so let's switch hats a little bit because we'll bring you
Mhm.
back to your everyday job. You
Mhm.
wrote a nonfiction book.
I did. So yes, my for real name is Anna Bartolucci, and I'm a licensed psychologist and behavioral sleep medicine specialist. So yeah, I make my most of my money helping people sleep without drugs.
Okay.
And so when I introduce myself at conferences, I tell them I then hope to keep my readers up all night with my fiction. And some people call it a conflict of interest. I call it a business plan.
There you go. You keep them
Yeah,
up all night, and then when they disrupt their sleep pattern, you get them back to sleep.
exactly.
There you go.
So I wrote Better Sleep for the Overachiever after about a decade in practice. And I had been seeing this overachieving, mind racing, maybe not quite type A, but just had a hard time shutting it off and just felt like they needed to keep going, going, going. And so I'd had enough of the same conversations
Mm-hmm.
to gather up, okay, so here is a chapter on overachievers, and here are some basic sleep tips. But the book is really about the things that people do and think and feel, or don't do and think and feel during the day, that contributes to that mind racing and the sleep problem at night. So there's a chapter on perfectionism, a chapter on procrastination, and how people screw up with time management. So it's been a lot of fun to write that now to tell people about it. And I also put it out in 2020 without much marketing because we were of course slammed at the practice, and it's at that point it was just me and one other psychologist. Then we have another part-time with us. And I needed something for my referral sources to be able to give to their patients or recommend to their patients of here's a fun place to at least get started while you're waiting to get in.
Right. I happen to know quite a few in the Coastal Magic Reading Challenge who have gotten this book, and they have talked about it when we're talking about books that we've read, and the discussions they have, I wish you could have heard it because you are reaching people. You are
Oh, I'm so
people.
happy. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Is there anything else about these books you'd like to share?
No, just again, if people are interested in more Fire Dancer or more Perfect books, please let me know.
Okay, awesome. So here we are back to our main page. And now that we've gone through each of the series individually, is there anything that you noticed that you hadn't realized before?
Well, I mean, I think I've realized it before, but I think it's also good to remember is that, I was the kid who grew up not stealing my mom's romances. I grew up stealing my dad's English mysteries.
Yeah.
And so pretty much everything I write has a mystery in it, of course, except for Better Sleep for the Overachiever. So yeah, even A Perfect Man has a little mystery in it. And then pretty much everything has romantic elements as well.
Okay. I think with urban fantasy and romance, there's a different expectation based on readers' taste. So if you were to say, this is my most romantic, what series would you point to?
Probably Fae Files.
Okay. If you were to be asked, which is your most action adventure series, which one would that be?
That would be Ether Psychics.
Okay. On your lycanthrope files, it's urban fantasy. What is the tone? It's not horror,
No.
right? So about where on the 1 to 10 on the spooky side do you think it is?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I think about them definitely more in terms of being like thrillers rather than spooky, but there is definitely
Okay.
some supernatural stuff going on, and there is a ghost in Blood Shadows. So I would probably put them at like a 5.
Okay. Where would you put it on the thriller scale?
Probably 7.
Okay. The Fire Dancer series, there's a demon. For people who
Mhm.
don't like demons, my take on that story was not fire and brimstone, scary horror demons.
No, exactly. See, I don't like demons either. So if you really want to get into it, like the underlying structure of the story always surprised me is basically an urban fantasy retelling of the Book of Tobit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's definitely not a scary demon. I mean, it's the demon is the enemy, and they do have to figure out how to defeat it, but it's not like there's not possession or anything super creepy like that.
Right. We mentioned on the Ether Psychics, those are in audio. We know the urban fantasy ones are not.
Correct. Yeah. So the only other thing that is in audio is Better Sleep for the Overachiever, and that was me narrating it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I got to go into a studio and I had a director, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You had a director for reading your own words.
I did. And as it turned out, I didn't really need a director. So
Yeah.
good to know for next time if that happens again.
There you go. Okay, that was fabulous. I loved hearing about all of your books, and the urban fantasy, like I said, is my go-to. So I am dying to read those. Um, I I have to read like the entire series and then I go to the next, because if I don't, then it's like I forget where I'm at, and then it gets confusing.
Yeah.
But I am really, really looking forward to those urban fantasy books.
Excellent.
So, and I'm so happy you're going to be joining us this year. I Every time we've spoken, I've loved speaking with you, and your books are awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to being there as well. And it works out well because my sister lives nearby. So I'll be able to visit
Oh, wow.
her too. Yep.
Yeah, so basically I'm going to be able to meet my new sister is what you're saying.
Exactly. I will tell her that you like dragons as well.
There you go. Well, thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.